Welcome back, random stranger. Last time with Hibike, we got some huge emotional payoffs with the band making nationals, yay, and more details revealed about Taki sensei's motivation for going to Kataoji and then whipping the band into shape, and it was all in memory of his late wife. And then just to balance out the intensity of emotions, we also got to kick back a little with some cute moments at the school festival or fete thing. Although I am looking forward to what they're setting up for Asuka, because it was quite the cliffhanger last time, and I feel like I have been waiting since we met Asuka in season 1 really to figure out what makes her tick and what's going on with this mysterious woman that is coming after her. But first, let's just rewind a bit and go back to the moments leading up to the competition performance in episode 5. And I thought, again, that Hibike did an amazing job capturing the very small but meaningful interactions between a teacher and their students that are part of gearing up for a major competition, or they're just a major performance. For example, I love that Taki sensei made a point to tell Kumiko that she played well and to remember that for the competition. Same thing with Hashimoto praising Mizore for her expressiveness, which was like a whole thing a few episodes back. I think positive reinforcement is just so important for building confidence right before a big performance. And I know that sounds kind of like common sense, but in my experience, it's rare for a teacher to be so explicitly supportive. Or maybe I just had some really tough ass teachers. I don't know. Taki also told the band that they don't need to do anything different for the performance. In other words, you have reached perfection. It's hard to describe the feeling you get when, as a musician, you have reached peak performance. Because by that point, every note and every technical motion, every phrasing and dynamic is already baked into your instincts, so much so that playing the piece feels almost as natural as breathing. And yet you still can't really escape the nerves. It's a complete mental game at that point. So that's why Kumiko's friend, I'm pretty sure it was the one from Rika who called her, I think, when she called and told Kumiko to not talk to her, even if they see each other at the competition, I was like, yep, that makes total sense, because you do what you have to do in order to stay in the zone and not lose your focus. Moments like these, little interactions strung together, through which I think Hibike perfectly encapsulated the emotions and the encouragement and the mindset involved in prepping for a performance that you have worked incredibly hard for and also is incredibly high stakes. It just made the lead up to the actual competition performance much more authentic and dramatic. I loved the shot of Haruka and Kaori bowing to the school rehearsal building, and I did not realize the significance of that until just a few weeks ago when I happened to watch the annual Tokyo University tea marathon with a friend of mine who has been living in Japan for the last couple of years. So what happens is when a fourth year student runner, so a student in their final year, finishes like the last leg of their race, they turn and then they bow towards the road in a sign of respect to something that they have dedicated so much of their time training for. And it's a kind of thank you to the sport for being such an important part of their lives. And I'm guessing that is what Haruka and Kaori were doing too when they bowed to the rehearsal building. It's their final year in band, and whatever the outcome, they are grateful for the entire experience. And I thought it was just a really sweet detail to include. We shed blood, sweat, and tears until we are bone dry, all for a single 12-minute performance. No truer words have been spoken to try and explain the insanity that is involved with preparing a musical performance. It's such a distinctly human endeavor, to be crazy enough to pour months and months of hard work into putting together a relatively short performance where success is never guaranteed. In fact, as we talked about in previous episodes, there is only one winner and everyone else falls short of that. But being able to master your craft to that level is also one of the best things about being human. there is no risk without reward. Winning can make you, losing can break you, or sometimes it can motivate you even more. It's all very dramatic and I think irrational, but exhilarating. And it's why musicians willingly put themselves through this eternal emotional ringer. It does not stop until you put down your instrument. This pursuit of greatness, of that unforgettable moment of triumph, is what makes it all worthwhile. So yay for musicians who just, don't pass the sanity test. A couple of backstage moments. So while waiting for their turn to perform, the Catalji kids overheard Rika, the school that they were very intimidated by in season 1, to learn that they only received a silver. That would have come as quite a shock to them, obviously, because they're the blue demons, and it might have even caused a bit of self-doubt. They are in the big leagues now, and it's only going to get harder, which is why it was so important in that moment for Taki sensei to continue being the big dork that he is, because it's just so great at calming the kids down. Asuka's pep talk was kick-ass too. She succinctly summarized how they never would have come so far without Taki and his somewhat revolutionary way of managing the band, just rousing them from their complacency and giving them all a reason to do their best. I have to say, when Asuka started her sentence with, "Also, I'm going to be completely honest," I was like, here we go. This is where she's going to say something typically sarcastic and ruin the inspirational mood. But no, she made this really impassioned appeal to this feeling that they all shared, which is that there's no point in them having come this far to then not give every last bit of fight they have in them so that everyone in the world can know how awesome they are. And then I loved how her Ride for Ruin speech was just immediately switched off and she was back to her sassy, smug self, and she just threw the mic back at Haruka, knowing that there was no way she could follow up that speech. Given the almost non-existent hints that we have seen of Asuka's home life, I mean, we've only caught a glimpse of the very serious-looking woman who might be her mother. I wonder if we come back to this speech later, knowing what we'll find out, whether it will reveal what kind of pressure she's been under. If we were to speculate, say maybe she was brought up in a home environment where she feels bound by a really high level of expectation and she's just constantly scrutinized. Music maybe might have been an outlet for her perfectionism or her expected perfectionism. It just let her control her own destiny for once. Maybe band is the one sphere where she can set her own ambitious goals, the one place where she can carve out her own path and prove her worth on her own terms, maybe. The significance of Myojo Technical playing the Pulavotzian dance is that it was the song that the Minami girls had played when they lost previously. I think it was 2 reactions back that we also looked at how it's basically a song that represents this burgeoning love between Mizore and Nozomi. And lo and behold, as the song was playing, there was this moment backstage where Mizore vowed to dedicate her playing to Nozomi. Yeah, you guys know how I feel about this because I ranted at length about the danger, I guess, of making another person the sole or the main reason for why you play your instrument. If, say, for whatever reason, the other person disappoints you or the nature of your relationship changes, which happens all the time because people always change and people aren't perfect either, there's this danger that your love for music could very well fizzle out and spiral into the depressive pits of hell if the other person doesn't meet your expectations, as it kind of did for Mizore a while back. Here was a fascinating comparison by Sapinta. I was wondering, is Taki sensei's motive to reach nationals that different from Mizore's motive to stay in band? They both seem to stem from the same sentiment of wanting to fulfill your lost dear one's dream. Of course, it doesn't mean that it will be forever their only reason. Mizore already discovered that she is enjoying music for music's sake and not just as a means to be by Nozomi's side. Yeah, I hope so too. I'm pretty sure Taki sensei is also taken by his job for his own sake now, or for its own sake now. He seemed so when he talked to Kumiko when she forgot her phone. That didn't even cross my mind, to be honest, and is actually a really good point. It is similar in that they were both initially motivated by the memory or the loss of someone that they deeply cared about and who inspired them to pursue music. And then they both discovered that they loved what they did for its own sake, which is great. The interactions between Mizore and Nozomi in these few episodes just kind of gave me a little pause. I thought Mizore had learned the lesson that she is enjoying music for its own sake, independent of Nozomi. But in these episodes, it kind of seemed like she's very much back in a state of dependency on Nozomi that feels a little bit weird. I could be seeing things that aren't there actually, and I also know that change doesn't happen overnight. So she's maybe obviously very happy that Nozomi and her are friends again and that they can be in band together again. And so it's sort of a slow process of learning to separate the two. Suffice to say, I just don't think it's healthy for Mizore to still be, if she is, right? If she's not, then that's fine. And I'm just like overthinking things. But it's not healthy for her to be in this mindset where she's playing for Nozomi. I think it's a nice romantic idea, but realistically, it kind of, in my opinion, would stunt her maturity as a player and stop her from developing a love for music aside from Nozomi. There's also no indication anything's changed with regards to Mizore realizing that Nozomi still has friends that aren't her, to say nothing of the fact that their relationship was incredibly one-sided to begin with. I also suspect Hibike, the show, hadn't quite satisfactorily dealt with the underlying issues between Mizore and Nozomi, and it wasn't really meant to because they have to focus on other things, right? So hopefully, like, all the things that Yuko yelled at Mizore about being happy, playing music for her own sake sunk in a little, but it's hard to say just based on the Hibike episodes. I think Liz and the Bluebird was the movie that went deeper into their relationship and was really the place where they dealt with the unhealthy or the healthier aspects of Mizore and Nozomi's relationship. So yes, I am very much looking forward to watching that movie. Related to all this was a rather comforting take, I think, from Hoffatel. I want to continue off from my previous comment, the interpersonal aspect of individual growth. Season 1 was about why do you play? This season asks the question, who do you play for? In this episode, we see the latter question in the following. Mizore plays for Nozomi, Reina plays for Kumiko, though as you said, how serious she means it is unclear. Hazuki also asks Kumiko and Reina to play for her and Team Monica to inspire them. Taki plays or conducts for his late wife. Mamiko stops playing for her parents. I'm not a musician, but I'm of the camp who believes that one's full potential in anything we do is realized once we've found the balance between playing for ourselves and playing for others. Great point. While Mizore still says she plays for Nozomi, I believe her performance and more positive demeanor implies that she is starting to rediscover her personal passion for music. She's not fully there yet, but I think she's on her way to having a healthier relationship with music. Yeah, again, it's interesting that they're showing her separation of her connection to Nozomi and her love for music as a slow process, that it doesn't happen overnight. Meanwhile, I see Reina as opposite of Mizore here. In season 1, she was more focused on herself. Anyone who got in her way be damned. Yeah. But over time, she's starting to learn more how to play with and for others without letting go of her drive to become special. I don't know if she's becoming a better or worse musician, but I think she's becoming a more complete, balanced person. I love that sentence. And I really liked how you pointed out all the different types of playing for that's going on with all of these characters. It kind of also makes me wonder what Asuka's playing for, or what she wants to, or who she wants to stop playing for. Also, the really excellent point about finding the right balance between playing for ourselves and playing for others was like a reminder. It's so weird because I think my personal bias, at least in music, tilts towards playing for myself or ourselves, because my experience is more heavily focused on solo performances and music exams as opposed to group orchestral or band performances. So Hibike is definitely giving me a fresh perspective on that balance too. It wasn't really a balance I had to make. The reasons for playing solo stuff differs a little bit from playing in a group. Reasons like playing for your friends doesn't really apply to solo stuff, because at the end of the day, you really are just honing your own skill and playing as an individual. And so it's just natural that your main motivation has to be because you want to do this for yourself and not for anyone else. Whereas I could see how in a group situation, those motivations can differ a little bit. Also, out of that list, I am not surprised that playing for parents was the one motivator that wasn't sustainable in the end. I cannot tell you how many times I've come across my friends and my students who only were playing and practicing hard because their parents forced them to, and it never ever ends good. Or they just quit altogether and they just end up doing something that they actually like doing. Immediately after the very solemn exchange between Mizore and Nozomi was this rather facetious one between Kumiko and Reina, who had been watching Mizore and Nozomi and were clearly making fun of them. Obviously, Kataoji did very well, but what did go wrong was Reina's solo. That was a problem. It just wasn't as good as it was in her solo audition in season 1. And I have since learned that the drop in the quality of Reina's playing wasn't actually part of the story. It was more that Kyoani, for some reason, were not able to hire the professional trumpet player that had played Reina's parts in the previous season. So instead, we got a college student playing her parts for this performance. And I understand there were probably budget issues, so not really complaining, but also have to say that I was a little bit disappointed, but it's okay. It was strange too. Kaori made this little speech that made it sound like she was prepared for this to be her very last performance and she was going to hand over the reins to Yuko. But Yuko, being Yuko, refused to accept that and just reminded everyone that this isn't the end of the road for them. They still have nationals to go, which was true. Which then led to this very corny, but I guess very wholesome moment where they had a team huddle and like a team finger point. Maybe I'm just cynical and jaded. But, you know, for Kaori and the other third years, passing on the torch to the next generation was always going to be bittersweet. But I do like that Yuko redirected Kaori and the other third years' focus to just making the most of their remaining time together. So that team finger point, though corny, did capture that unified sentiment. They were really just relishing the present moment while gearing up for just one more challenge, you know, the nationals. All right, thoughts on the full performance of Crescent Moon. I appreciated so much that we got the full like 7 or 8 minute performance of the piece. All those dramatic zoom shots showing how the students were putting everything they had into it. All of the really delicious instrument shots showing off the very shiny surfaces and the very accurate fingering or the drumming or whatever it was. The fact that they not only matched the instruments playing to what was being shown on screen, but they also deliberately emphasized specific sections where we have heard students struggling in past episodes, like Shuuichi here with his phrase, to show that they have practiced so hard and they have actually mastered those difficult parts at this point. And that also included the run that we've heard Kumiko play countless times by now. Also, Mizore being excellent and so emotional in her solo. Everything just came together and they made sure to have all of these focus shots and to hit all of those memories of these students' individual struggles. So I thought that was really well done. It was kind of nice to also see all these little sideways glances to show that they're aware of each other while they're playing, which is so important for a team effort. And all these like slow-mo shots of this sweat flying off their faces and matching the slow emotional parts of the piece to this montage of their memories together. And I could just go on and on and on and on of all the ways that they so succinctly tied together the different plot points that they hit throughout the seasons through this piece of music, which was incredible. In terms of critiquing the musical side of things, someone shared a link to me to a video where an actual band player fantastically broke down the great and then the not so great things about this performance. So I highly recommend watching it in full. I will have the link down below. And I learned so much about brass and woodwind techniques through watching this one video. I'm glad that I'm not the only one who picked up on the fact that the trumpets were indeed being a little bit overly eager, but also that Reina was drunk during her solo with her relative lack of nuance and vibrato and everything else that made her audition performance so classy and so scrumptious. But as I said before, it's fine because overall, Kyoani put so much love and effort into making the overall performance as real to life and as musically accurate as possible, to the point of animating the exact fingerings of the notes, which is insane. So I think we can forgive them for not being able to nab that professional trumpet player. My favorite example is how they made sure the cymbal girl used the correct stance and technique to clash the cymbals together. Someone actually posted this blog post in our Discord, which I thought was incredible, and it's worth reading in full because of the ridiculous amount of detail that's in it to show how much effort Kyoani put into making the performance as musically accurate as possible. But the specific part dealing with the cymbals was here. So at 14:29, the cymbal crash is done well too. Good start to the hit, crashes down low and close to her body. Where usually the hits bang one tip into the other cymbal, this is more a symmetrical crash. Notice after the hit, she immediately raises her arms, spreads her arms out and twists her wrists outwards so that the full circles of the cymbals face the audience. This is so the sound isn't muffled by her body, and by raising them up high and turning them out towards the audience, the sound can travel above the ensemble and reverberate more fully for a longer period of time rather than deadening the sound with her chest like one would do for a short crash. This level of detail is insane, right? So that is why the Crescent Moon dance was such a joy to watch. I honestly got goosebumps rewatching it. And then seeing the looks on the students' faces when they'd finished and heard the audience's applause even made cynical old me a little bit emotional. Not to mention that the other students who were backstage too got emotional as well. You know, throughout this whole process, we never once forget that though the students aren't all on stage, they are all competing together and working together as one. The announcement that they'd actually made it through to the nationals was also done perfectly. There was this outpouring of emotion and there were tears and there was lots of hugging, really emphasizing that their hard work had paid off. And it was just very cathartic. In the midst of all this celebration, we got a quiet but a great moment of growth for Mizore. Earlier, she had expressed how much she hated competitions, but now swept up in this wave of joy, in this moment of sweet, sweet victory, she acknowledged that maybe competitions aren't so bad after all. In fact, she loves them. It was a huge step for someone who previously had associated competitions with such trauma and such crushing emotional stress. But again, as I said before, hopefully it's actually coming from a place where she loves playing music for her own sake and not just because of someone else. This moment tipped the scales, I felt, back in favor of the fact that yes, she is on her way to having a healthier relationship with music. With the Kansai competition over, we were able to kick back a little and luxuriate in the fact that Midori also plays the bass because she's a total badass. I assume Nozomi has been allowed to rejoin band because she was there like making eyes at Mizore. And importantly, I think Asuka's plans for world domination have become one step closer because she has somehow gotten rid of Taki and is now conducting the band herself. There were a couple of interesting things to note here. First, Kumiko has always been, for some reason, attuned to Asuka, and she was the only one who noticed just a brief flash of hesitation or like a sadness in Asuka's eyes as she announced to the audience when their next competition will be. Whether this means that she already knows that she's not going to be able to compete at nationals for personal reasons is something that we're going to just have to watch and see. On another note, in any other show, I'd be wondering whether Haruka's okay with Asuka always taking center stage with a lot of things, like conducting the band, doing announcements, giving these powerful pep talks, things that you'd expect the president to be doing, not the vice president. But I'm not worried in Hibike's case because it's already established that Haruka is like the cool, laid-back dad of the band. So instead of her ego getting in the way, Haruka is mature enough to trust Asuka, and I think that their dynamic really subverts the expected president, vice president roles. She's happy to let Asuka take the reins when she's best suited for it, but then Haruka also steps up when she has to, especially when Asuka can't or won't, or if the situation requires more emotional intelligence and outreach than Asuka is capable of. I also love the fact that they ended with the song Academic Paradise, which was the song that the students, or Team Monica, did last season to show everyone that they hadn't been slacking off either. And it was just really wholesome. I feel like they chose that piece to emphasize that the focus should ultimately be on the music itself, not the winning and the trophies. So it was a great reference to the whole arc of what's important is the joy and the creativity of coming together as a band and creating something special together. My favorite silly moments from the school festival was Reina complimenting Kumiko on her maid outfit, which is really sweet. Also, our favorite old couple just having a very dramatic standoff over the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I cannot overstate how much I love Yuko and Natsuki together. This little interaction where Mizore basically showered Nozomi with cakes after other customers had already paid for them, by the way, was hilarious. But again, it just kind of makes me worry, just wondering if their relationship is headed in the right healthy direction. Asuka was being her usual eccentric self, except in witch form or like fortune teller form. And I do love that she is the only one who really gets under Kumiko's skin like this. And as I said before, I am super curious to see what gets revealed about her background and why they have been constantly showing us moments where Kumiko has noticed Asuka not being this weird, bombastic self of hers and kind of just being a bit sad and lost in her own thoughts. Kumiko and Shuuichi were both in the haunted house. I didn't understand why Shuuichi was being so like huffy and mad. I can only guess that he's still very frustrated over not knowing what to do about the feelings he has for Kumiko. So I don't know, but he's still like a nice boy and he walks with her. I really hate haunted houses myself, so I can appreciate that. I found it very fitting though that Reina interrupted Shuuichi just as he was going to ask Kumiko something important, something personal even. It's not the first time that this has happened where Reina has been a cockblock, and I think she just enjoys doing that role. You know what else happens every time? Kumiko immediately forgets about Shuuichi. So when someone brings him up to her, she's always like, huh? Who are we talking about again? Again, not the first time that this has happened, and you really have to feel bad for Shuuichi for taking up so little or zero of Kumiko's mind space. I do love when Kumiko and Reina have these quiet, reflective conversations about where they're at musically. Now that Kansai is over, you'd think that they'd be allowing themselves to kick back a little. But if you're doing music for the long haul, mentally you're always preparing for the next big challenge. There's always a new song to learn or a new skill to perfect or just ever higher levels of mastery to achieve, and it's never really over until you quit entirely. For example, when I was doing my graded music exams, some of which you spend an entire year preparing for, especially at the higher grades, as soon as you finish one exam, you maybe get a day off or something before you're already being handed pieces for the next grade up. And I can't say that I miss those days, but I do appreciate the skills that I learned through persisting and through just constantly looking for the next challenge. There was some tension at home when Kumiko overheard Mamiko telling her parents that she wants to quit university. And you knew that it wasn't an easy decision for her because it looks like she walked home in the typhoon, probably thinking about how to spill the news without causing a scene. And I found it interesting that Mamiko told mom first, which was interesting and also so accurate. You kind of go for the parent that is less strict and less going to blow up as soon as they hear the news. Predictably, dad was not happy and did the super typical Asian parent thing by saying, we'll talk about this later, probably hoping that it's just a passing fad or his kid is suffering from some kind of temporary delusion and the problem will just go away on its own. Interestingly, after mom found Kumiko eavesdropping outside the door, She very pointedly reminded her to not tell anyone about Mamiko's decision. I thought that was accurate to how a lot of parents need to save face amongst their circle of friends, in Asian circles at least. Having a kid drop out of university is not something you want to have to explain to other people or have spread, because it's seen as somewhat shameful and a little bit odd, like your kid wasn't smart enough to complete university. In fact, as an Asian kid growing up, I didn't even realize that not going to university was an option until like way later. When I talked to my non-Asian friends who were doing other cool things like apprenticeships or vocation school, going to university was something that 99% of Asian parents expected. Like a lot of our parents' generation didn't get the chance to go to university or even high school. So I could see how giving up that opportunity would be seen as something really preposterous. Like you were spitting in the face of everything your parents had sacrificed for you to get this opportunity at higher education. It might be different now with like a younger generation and a younger generation of parents, but yeah, I thought it was an interesting detail that Keone added. So it's really not just playing music that they're great at portraying realistically, it's also all these nuanced family and social dynamics. Kumiko got a bit riled up too, accusing Mamiko essentially of being a hypocrite because she'd given Kumiko a hard time about not putting enough effort into getting into a good university and a good job, and yet here she was dropping out. It was a very high schooler, very black and white take on the situation. Clearly Mamiko had a lot of pressure riding on her, and initially she likely felt like she had no choice but to go to university. And I think for a while she stuck to this predetermined path laid out for her and tried to warn Kumiko that she's going to have to face this same harsh reality herself down the track. Sure, maybe Mamiko conveyed the warning in a slightly overbearing way, but she did it ultimately because she cares about Kumiko and she wanted to set her expectations more realistically. Still, everyone has a breaking point, and over time, Mamiko clearly just cracked, probably because she's not enjoying her studies and it's just becoming an unbearable weight on her. So I felt really bad for Mamiko, and I think one day Kumiko will understand more that as you grow older, people don't or can't always act according to what they really want. The pressure to secure stable employment and to give up a much riskier endeavor, say music as a career, becomes that much greater. On a more positive note though, maybe Mamiko's courage to walk her own path might inspire Kumiko down the line. When it comes to Kumiko having to decide her future career, maybe Mamiko's experience will help Kumiko follow her passion to keep pursuing music or pursuing whatever it is that she really wants to do instead of following what her parents want her to do. Kumiko walked out into the rain because she can't handle being at home anymore, and then she bumped into Taki-sensei buying flowers for his wife, and it turns out that he is a regular customer there, which is actually a very sad thing. He has clearly been going to the same shop every year for the past 5 years to buy flowers for his wife. I think Taki just continues to prove that he is an amazing person. He is so patient with Kumiko, who was super awkward as soon as she spotted his wedding ring and basically was just going to walk home in the typhoon just to make a quick, very awkward exit. Taki, of course, offered her a ride, and on the way, he did address Kumiko's curiosity about his wife, even though he was in no way obligated to. He understood that Kumiko meant no harm in her sort of very bumbling curiosity, and though he seems to be the type to prefer privately grieving, he recognized that Kumiko's interest came from empathy and not like an invasiveness or a desire to gossip or anything. What was interesting about the photo that Taki very quickly chucked into the back of the car was that you could just tell so much about the personalities of Taki and his friends and his wife. Taki seems super reserved compared to his wife and maybe even Hashimoto, and I think the other person was Niyama-sensei. Just from the huge smile on her face, she looks like she was kind of like the day to his night. Maybe her free spirit played a huge role in drawing him out of his shell. Like she clearly brought him a lot of joy and married his passion for music with that joy, which is like the ultimate peak in life, you know? Even though Taki was reluctant to talk about her, he still provided a little insight into how the memory of his wife is what inspired him to take the job at Catalgy. You know, he wants to help their band get to and win nationals as a way to fulfill the dream that his wife never got the chance to fulfill. So even though now she's gone, her wish lives on through Taki's commitment to the students. It was interesting to find out that Taki did not have a great relationship with his father, who was the conductor of the ensemble at the time that his wife was there. His connection to Catalgy, in other words, seems to really stem from a very painful history. You know, a father that he wasn't close to, and a wife who attended the school who then became sick and died. So had it not been for wanting to honor his wife's memory, Taki may never have wanted to return to this place that probably holds a lot of sad memories for him. Can you just imagine, like, every day as he's walking through the halls of Catalgy, he's thinking that this is where my wife used to go. She herself used to walk down these halls too. That put an entirely new perspective on the grief that Taki has been holding inside this whole time that must be just amplified by the very physical setting that he's in. Knowing Taki's motivation for coming to Catalgy and whipping the band into shape really deepened my respect for his approach to teaching the students. He has a lot riding on getting to nationals and winning it, but he never once allowed his personal goal to dictate or to cloud the purpose of his teaching. He ultimately has always aimed to empower his students to shape their own aspirations and to want to play music themselves and to want to go to nationals themselves. So despite what it meant to him, he never has pressured or guilt-tripped them, but instead just naturally nurtured their passion for music. It's kind of a really stark contrast to Mamiko's dad demanding that she follow the university path. And I don't judge Kumiko and Mamiko's dad for doing that, for having that as an expectation, because he does likely think that it's the best thing for his daughter. But Taki offers an alternative model compared to just laying down a mandate for your student or for your kid. He took the risk of allowing the kids to decide for themselves how far they wanted to take it, even if it meant that there was every chance that they'd choose to just continue slacking off and then he'd never get the chance to accomplish his wife's dream. He elevated their agency over his own personal wishes because he knows that growth and passion needs to come from within each of the students. It can't be externally forced or imposed on them. Here was a slightly different take on Taki's approach from Rex Arcadia, which I found fascinating. They wrote, "We learn more about Taki's personal motivation, i.e. to fulfill his wife's dream of leading Catalgy to gold at nationals. Yet at the start of the year, he gives everyone a choice whether to play just for fun or get serious about going to nationals. I wonder if he was truly fine with either option, or if he knew that going for gold would almost certainly win when framed that way and put to a public vote. It's similar to the trumpet audition where Taki probably knew Kaldi would have too good of a conscience to accept the solo part after such a direct comparison to Reina. I suspect he intentionally constructs situations where the outcome is fairly obvious but still gives students the illusion of choice. That's not to say I think he's unfairly manipulating his students, but I think he's more cunning than he appears. He's a very well-developed character, and I wish I could say the same about the other male characters, cough cough Shuuichi." Yeah, I still feel bad for Shuuichi. Also, the girl playing the cymbals is Juna Inoue. Her popularity went through the roof this year, judging by the amount of fan art on Twitter, since she became a semi-prominent character in the OVA that came out in August. Love that Michi-sensei was crying after the announcement that Catalgy is moving on. Yes, so you were the person that mentioned that. Such a small moment, but shows how much she cares despite her super stern facade. First off, I am not surprised that Cymbal Girl became super popular. The way that she clashed those cymbals gave me, someone who knows next to nothing about percussion, the chills. So it's universal, that love for her. Also, some really great points made about Taki. giving the students an illusion of choice is an apt way to describe what he might be doing. On the one hand, my perspective of him is that he put the students' desires above his own desire to win. But you're also right in the sense that he really did arrange the situation and presented or laid out the stakes for the students in such a way as to almost ensure that they would choose to act in a way that suited his own goals. And I kind of get a kick out of thinking that he's just playing 4D chess with the students. We saw how much this new information about Taki and his motivations in turn motivated Kumiko to keep doing her best for the band and to wake up at this ridiculous hour in the morning to practice. But more importantly to note, even without the knowledge of Taki's sad personal story, the other students have more than enough motivation to also keep practicing hard to get to nationals and to win it. That last part of the episode where Kumiko was musing about whether next year they'd gain some talented first years, but also probably lose some of their talented third years, cast a kind of shadow over what's coming next. The biggest cliffhanger of all was, of course, our introduction to this severe-looking woman who means business, probably Asuka's mum, who looks like she could kick your ass with her eyes closed. My guess is that she's going to tell Asuka that either that she has to focus on her studies and to forget about nationals, so like a Mamiko situation, or her mum might be a super high-performing musical maestro coming to pressure Asuka to succeed, and that if she doesn't win nationals, she's gonna shame the family. I don't know. Either way, it feels like they're really gonna sour the whole band experience for Asuka. Finally, some really cool notes about the beginning of episode 6 from Red, which I hadn't noticed until they actually mentioned it. So, usually an episode begins with a recap of the previous episode while the intro to the OP music plays over it, eventually cutting to the initial black and white OP animation where those bombastic staccato notes start playing. Normally, the OP would remain in black and white during the verse as the OP depicts the various characters practicing, doing schoolwork, and goofing off, with a sudden surge of color when the chorus begins and the OP starts depicting the characters actually playing on a concert stage. It's like the passion of music and competition spices up these characters' lives so intensely that everything else almost feels monotonous in comparison. In episode 6, however, the recap ends with Gataoji being selected to go to nationals, and when OP proper begins, it is already in color, as if simply having the chance to compete at a national level makes everything in their life seem all the more vibrant. The black and white of earlier iterations of the OP reined in the emotions of the music and animation, but clearly it was to delay the sheer joy and enthusiasm that this now colored OP evokes. Thank you so much for sending those notes in. I don't think I would have noticed, probably not, but now that I'm going back and I'm rewatching the differences in the OP and how there's a flood of color now, it was awesome. Just another awesome way that Kyoani infuses its animation and its design to convey things that aren't necessarily explicitly conveyed in the dialogue, which I think is just genius. Here we go, guys. Season 2, episode 7. May the mystery of Asuka be revealed. Let's go in 3, 2, 1, play. Hashimoto remains weird. There's the full color. Again, thanks, Red. That was a really cool detail. I don't know. I have a feeling that maybe next episode it'll revert back to black and white because Asuka's gonna be in very deep depression. Just got a bad feeling. I do love, though, that this song is all about the exuberance of youth, you know? if you remain young, you know, there are some things that you don't realize are impossible to achieve, and then you just go and do them. Just change the volume. Okay. Man, wouldn't it be a plot twist if Asuka actually does not compete at nationals? But that's a super high BPM. It's like down on 160. Because it's great practice. Or it's kind of like a, you know, decompressing sort of exercise. Okay. It's kind of a little pre-competition tussle. Oh god. Oh no. No, mom. Okay. Okay, we've got a Mamiko situation on our hands. It's code red. Oh, oh, just throwing some shade at mom, being like, you're forcing your kid. Oh, Asuka's mom. Oh, single parent household. Oh, I mean, I gotta say, Taki has some balls. That soft smile at the end, just hoping that it'll convince her. But she's hard as a steel wall. Oh, no. Don't hit it. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Shit. Oh, no. No. So Asuka is the parent in this relationship. She grew up in an abusive family. Okay. Dad was probably a deadbeat, left the two of them. Her mom did the best that she could. Oh, God. That's the idealistic Reina talking, and she probably doesn't have parents that put her in that situation. Is she thinking about Mamiko and how maybe she was a bit harsh on her own sister? No. I mean, she cares. Only Kumiko really has seen through that mask and that barrier that Asuka puts up. Or not. Maybe no one's seen through her wall. All of her little minions actually love her. Oh God. Just knowing what she's going through at home makes the mask that she puts on even more tragic. Confirmed. She's doing that thing she has learned to do at home, which is just reassure everyone else while she holds this bursting emotion inside of her and all that sadness. No, Asuka. Maybe she can share it with Natsuki, like what she really thinks. Yes, Haruka. Okay, at least she has Kaori and Haruka. The more she puts on this act, the less confident they are in the fact that she's actually okay. Just. Oh, man. Do you notice her mom was like, "You're only doing this to make me suffer," and so she's just been brought up in this mindset that she can never do anything to cause trouble to anyone. Just hiding behind these weird English phrases. No. So the call worked. Wait, what did Asuka tell Natsuki to do? She's gonna take over Asuka's part. You mean the other way around, right? Nozomi is helping Natsuki practice. Keep pushing, girls. I just feel like they have to break that Asuka wall somehow. Like, just keep pushing. That's why she has to play out in all the fields and stuff. She literally cannot play her instrument at home. And she's still so amazing too, even though she can't practice at home. The principal, no Taki. Everyone's so sad. They kind of lost their head. I mean, he is just trying to hold it together too. Because his dream is on the line as well. Haruka, what are you gonna do? Are they gonna like gather everyone and then just play outside Asuka's house? Please do that. Hmm. Oh man, they're bringing that into, but of course it would have an impact. She literally stepped forward and she's stepping up into this leadership role. Yuko. Yuko's like, if anyone doesn't agree, I'm gonna gun for you. I love Yuko. Oh my god. Just went straight for the heart. Good choice, Natsuki. Just break the tension a little. What an about turn for Haruka, because literally just a few minutes before she was like, Asuka's special. We cannot do without Asuka. Have you heard from her yet? Now she's like, we've got to take that pressure off her. Mizore, the ever eternal cheerleader. Is Asuka gonna be around somewhere? Is she gonna be like hanging behind one of those like columns? Man, I mean, this performance isn't a competition. It's not a big competition, but I feel like it's equally as important because it's the first time they're not doing it with Asuka. Or not. She's not there to play though. I love her. Hey. Oh, how do they do those vibrations like off the snare? That animation was crazy. Hey, Go-Go Bells. Girl still with those like bandages on her fingers. Yeah, I would stop too, man. Who's that? Do we have a name? Hey, Symbol Girl. So cute. Uh, aw. Come on. Oh, okay, so she is playing. Come on, Rocket. Uh oh. Ah, Haruka has never been so cool. Come on. Oh, give it up for Dad. Yep. Yep. I want to see whoever's doing the whistle. Damn, that was such a cool song. Ah, so hype. Amazing. Just, that was a great, like, it just wiped away all the sad stuff. And now we're going to go back to it. Okay, so we know what Asuka's been dealing with, finally, after 2.5 seasons. I expected something similar to that she was getting a lot of pressure at home and it was conflicting with her desire to stay in the band, but I never expected for it to also turn out to be such an extreme situation where not only did Asuka grow up in a single parent household and all of its attendant unique challenges, and I can't even claim to know the sorts of struggles that both Asuka and her mom have had to go through, but also that slapping scene, it said so much that this has been a pattern, that it's not the first time that her mom has physically hit her. Knowing all this explains why Asuka has built up so many self-protective layers and just instinctively reacts in a way that makes people think that she's not serious or that she's unfathomable, that she doesn't really need help. Because I surmise that as a child, she likely had suffered significant emotional and mental and physical harm from the situation that she grew up in. And wrapping herself up in these layers and layers of protective steel was just the natural result of that. And yet, despite her situation, she is such a good kid. Like, she is so protective of her mom. Like, God knows how quickly she had to grow up in order to start supporting her mom in what was likely a very toxic environment. And it also explains why even when she's hurting, she keeps it inside and just deals with it on her own. It's not the healthiest way to deal with problems, but it's completely understandable given how she has been conditioned to not cause trouble, to just tough it out because her mom has needed her to be strong, probably for a very, very long time since she was very little. And also the stakes of Asuka getting a good job in order to support her single parent mom would be really high as well. And so the pressure that her mom put on her to quit band and to just not be a normie student is also understandable, even though at the same time, it's just so difficult. Like, I don't know if anyone can really make a harsh judgment on this whole situation. The other interesting thing that I was thinking about as I was watching that scene where Asuka's mom was confronting the principal and Taki at the same time was Taki's refusal to accept the resignation Asuka's mom had written for her. It obviously aligned with Asuka's own wishes to continue playing in band, but it was also surprisingly confrontational and probably, maybe, I don't know, overstepped the bounds of a proper teacher-parent dynamic. Like, I understand that Taki was defending Asuka's choice, and rightly so, but also I couldn't help but think back to that comment about how a lot of what he does is also aimed at ensuring that his personal goal and his late wife's goal of getting the kids to nationals proceeds as smoothly as possible. And I do not think he's the kind of person to like exploit situations for his own gain, and I think he genuinely cares for Asuka. But one also wonders how much of his motivation to keep Asuka was because he knew that she was the glue holding everyone else together, and that losing her would jeopardize or just basically bomb their chances at winning nationals. Finally, just some quick thoughts about how Haruka realized that Asuka wasn't special, that they all just idolized her and made her into this special supergirl that would lead them all to victory, and was doing all these things and setting the example for them and sort of really being the spirit of the group. I loved that everyone stepped up. Well, first of all, it was Haruka who stepped up. You know, she had to be the one to rouse everyone out of their stupor of losing Asuka. And Haruka had to be like, we can't put all of this on Asuka. We can't put our hopes and our chances of victory and just in general our musicality and how well we play all on Asuka, because that's not fair. You know, she probably realized that that's exactly what her mom has been doing and that she didn't want to add to that pressure. That was a huge positive that came out of this episode. Haruka stepping up. Haruka just absolutely slaying that Barry sax solo. I was just stunned and am a total fangirl of Haruka now. It seems like Asuka's still hanging around the band. I don't know. I guess we'll see if her mom comes around. Okay, if you guys are ready for episode 8, let's go in 3, 2, 1, play. Oh, I had to watch that slap again. What an awful position to be put in. Like stuck between a rock and a hard place. I'm so glad they put that really joyful performance in there just at the end. You gotta have some moments of levity, right? It's just such a heavy, heavy story. Well, we're still in color. And technically, Asuka is still playing with the band, so. Also, can we just dedicate a moment to Rika? I think her name was. Gosh, Goto and Rika? No, that's wrong. Whatever the girl's name is, Goto's girlfriend, how emotional she is, and basically how she treats Asuka as her mom. It just totally fell apart the second she knew that she'd left. I'm so happy when she came back. That was really cute. Still gotta find out the name of that sax girl. She's got like an aura about her that I really like. Also, Kumiko just again has this uncanny sense of walking into the most awkward situations. She's tiny. Look at that little omelet. Oh, interesting lead in. What? No way, man. Put those kids in when they're like 2 years old. Start whipping them into shape. Is this the Mamiko episode? Because what an interesting, I guess, bookend to Asuka's story. Oh. Or maybe her playing music was also her parents' idea. Oh, no, no. She's good with the trombone. being cut off. Ugh, why is this so scarily relatable? Okay, I really feel bad for Kumiko's mom also. Okay, I understand there's aversion to taking a beautician's course because, again, the Asian thing about how it's not really like a professional job, but here we go. Kumiko finally realizing that her sister went through the shits. Also, the thing she said about having to be the older sister and setting an example is very true. I'm a younger sibling, so I can't empathize. I mean, sympathize, but I can empathize. Oh. Still hanging around. Oh, okay, so she's still not quite being as consistent. You know what? Her mom probably doesn't know she's sneaking off to these rehearsals. She's like showing up whenever she can. Excuse me. Oh, the parallels. It's almost like Kumiko is worried she's going to lose another person that she's kind of idolized, especially on the music side of things. No. uh, uh, you can't say no, but also I understand if she wanted to say no because Asuka is kind of scary still. That is not dodgy at all. I don't know. She's got the aura of the psychopath killer. I would be worried. I would be worried. Raina, go with her. Make sure she comes back alive. Oh, this is gonna be interesting. Hmm. They have been playing the same song over and over again. Oh, she getting sick. I mean, we've been through this conversation before. Like, it doesn't matter, but it does. But also, what Hashimoto is saying is true. If you're worried constantly about winning or not winning, it does cramp your style a bit. It's the frustrating paradox of music. When you're thinking too much about it, your performance drops. And when you don't think about it, that's when it goes up. Oh, their entire youth section is getting wiped out. And Taki's like, we have a problem. The sensible couple. Ugh, what a friend. Ew, all that spit. Ew. Oh, oh. Aoi looks better. I mean, she has had time to process. It was so interesting that Taki sensei immediately picked up on the fact that the resignation letter came from Asuka's mom as opposed to Aoi. Survival tips, please. I wonder why, from Asuka's perspective, she's been drawn to Kumiko. It has been a constant factor, even from the very beginning. I mean, she didn't really have much of a choice. Ooh. Ugh. That was. That deserves a rewatch, that scene in particular. Something about how it's not that Aoi's happy that Asuka's suffering and has run into a bit of a roadblock, but it's also kind of like, see, even Asuka, even Asuka can get taken down. So my situation, it's not that I was particularly weak. Just shit happens. A little bit of like self gratification there. Interesting. It's just, I can't remember any specific interactions between Aoi and Asuka. I mean, Asuka probably looked down on her for quitting so easy, maybe. Isn't this how it always happens? There's too many people playing the popular instruments, and then this clueless kid gets tricked into playing the instrument no one else wants to play. uh, oh, it's so sad seeing little Kumiko and just how much she looked up to her sister, which explains why she was so explosive when she knew that her sister had quit university. But I feel like she's starting to understand more. She sat next to her sick bed. Cute. Because that's what girlfriends do. Just sitting in the dark, just waiting for her to wake up. Mm. No, it's okay. Just chuck the old one. This is better. This is so romantic. Just sitting in silence, listening to classical music. Only soulmates do this. I swear. uh. Hmm. It's sad. Oh man. Don't say it. Oh, it's that whole yes, she had a choice, but then there's this invisible pressure that is just as real as if it was forced onto her. So she did want to keep playing, but she felt as an older daughter that she had to meet certain expectations of her parents. And now it's Reina playing the Kumiko eavesdropper. I mean, she did tell her. So cute, little munchkin Kumiko. This is kind of just as sad as the other episode, just in a very different way. Oh, good boy, Shuuichi. Well done. Just needed that circuit breaker. Because these two, man, they're just talking past each other. Still being a cold ass, but hey, very different. It's reconciling with her sister made her fever go away. Not really, but that's a nice thought. That's Natsuki, right? Everyone's just stunned. That he did say Natsuki, right? I don't remember her surname. There was a positive resolution to that episode, I feel. The fact that Mamiko had forgotten that Kumiko's reason for playing was because of her initially. It's going back to that whole, do you play for someone or do you play for yourself? But often it initially starts off as because you were really inspired by someone or really looked up to someone and therefore you wanted to do what they did. So kind of like how with the Mizore Nozomi situation, Nozomi really pulled Mizore along and got her into wind ensemble. It was the same thing with Kumiko and her sister. So sweet. And then, of course, as Kumiko got to playing the youth for several more years, she just loved it herself until she could like stand up and be like, I like playing the youth, like way back in season 1. It's really cool how playing for someone slowly morphs into playing for yourself, and the two have so much overlap often. With the Asuka situation, I feel like I have to state the obvious, and that is that abuse in any form, whether physical or emotional abuse, is never, ever, ever okay. And a child should never, ever have to be put in that situation of having to suffer it. And speaking of emotional abuse, because the comparison between Asuka and Mamiko was so clear, they're both Kumiko's heroes in a way, and they were both forced to quit band by their parents. Sure, Mamiko is not in a situation where, she's being physically abused, or actually we don't really know that for sure, but assuming that she isn't, and the similarity lies more in her also being in a very harsh environment with these heavy expectations placed on her, it was still no less wrong of her dad, now that I'm thinking about it, to one threatened to kick her out of the house just because she was expressing what she wants to do as a career. I mean, I kind of thought you'd be happy that your kid knew what they wanted to do with their life instead of just being a deadbeat. But anyway, and two, the way that he placed the weight of her choice, or the weight of the choice, because it wasn't really hers, I would argue, of going to university, all on her. The way that he was like, we didn't force you. You were the one who chose to do entrance exams and to go to university. You know, that just did not sit right with me, because Mamiko was technically still a child when she had to make that choice. And a parent's way of exerting pressure can take all sorts of forms. It doesn't have to explicitly come from their mouths. For example, it was really telling when Mamiko shot back and was like, you didn't exactly make it easy to tell you what I really wanted to do. If your parents get angry at you for deviating from their expectations, you learn really quickly to just shut up and do what they want you to do. Some kids, other kids will just like explode, but that doesn't seem to be what Mamiko chose to do. So in essence, Mamiko's dad is doing a similar thing to Asuka's mom, in that he put his child in a situation that they never should have been put in the first place, except that it was kind of in reverse. So Asuka's mom explicitly demanded that Asuka quit, gave her no choice. Mamiko's dad, on the other hand, didn't come out and say that she had no choice and that she had to go to university, but he gave off all the signals that if she didn't follow that path, then he would respond poorly. So there's explicit pressure and then there's implicit pressure, and there's not always such a clear dividing line between the two. And just because you don't explicitly say something doesn't mean that as a parent, you haven't put an unfair amount of pressure on your kid. I wanted to revisit the Aoi scene where she learns about Asuka's struggles with her parents and totally misinterpreted the situation, because she was like, oh, I thought that someone as in control as Asuka would never stoop to arguing with her parents. This is something that she would think is beneath her to do. And Kumiko corrects her because her situation is totally different to Aoi's, I guess, in the sense that, yes, they both had to take time off music club or the band, and Aoi herself quit entirely. But the circumstances and the how to put it, I'm assuming Aoi wasn't under the extreme pressure of something like Asuka's mum, who really depended on Asuka and needed her to get into a really good school for her future prospects and also, you know, for their family. I think Aoi was more the typical study versus band life, not talented enough to do both, and therefore had to make a choice sort of situation. It's still tough. I'm not saying that it's not tough, but it's definitely in another bucket to Asuka's situation, I feel, because Asuka this whole time, she hasn't even had time, or she wasn't even able to practice at home because of her mom. You know, she's probably been just playing her youth out in empty fields this whole time, and we didn't even know about it. So Asuka, I feel, even though there's no explicit confirmation, but I feel like Asuka definitely had the much tougher road to walk. And yet Aoi was a little bit self-satisfied because she was pointing at that situation and making it so that it justified her own choice, but it wasn't really a fair equivalent. And I'm glad that Kumiko corrected her. I think I'll leave it at that. There's a lot more stuff to unpack, I know. I just want the time to sit and rewatch and catch every single detail and look and, you know, focus shot so that I really get the full taste of all of this emotional complexity that was going on with Asuka and her mom, Asuka and her friends, Kumiko and Asuka. We still don't know why Asuka invited her to her home. I don't know how that's gonna go, but hey, I'm always here for a good show. And Mamiko and Kumiko, of course, which I'm glad eventually smoothed itself out, it seemed, right at the end of that episode. Once again, thank you guys for watching Hibike with me. We are nearing, finally, the end. Hopefully we're gonna be keeping these videos rolling out at a little slightly quicker pace, but again, it's just been such a joy watching along with you guys and reading all your comments and just learning so much more about Hibike that I never would have if I'd watched for myself. So thank you guys so much. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I will see you here next time.